Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and have our Pledge of Allegiance. If you go, all stand. Follow me. I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag
of the United
of the
States
United
of
States of
America,
America
to the republic
and to
for
the
which it
republic for
stands,
which it stands,
one nation,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So now we'll go ahead and have a roll call vote. Commissioners Andre, Butler.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Coulson, Harris, Ortega, Riley, Reyna, Thetford.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Thornton.
Here.
So I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the city clerk for the city of Palmdale, and this is our first community workshop for redistricting. And we will have a presentation today by our consultants. But from here, we'll go to announcement by our city attorney.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here today. We're very excited to have this opportunity to have this workshop. Just a quick housekeeping item. I don't want to take too much of everyone's time so we can get into the substance. There's going to be two opportunities today to talk to the committee members and amongst yourselves. The first item would be during public comment. Public comment is an opportunity to speak regarding any items on the agenda today or not, and you'll be limited to 3 minutes in regards to that. I just want everyone to keep that in mind. There's going to be a more substantive portion for what we're all here for, which is item number 7, which would be the actual discussion regarding redistricting. So just keep that in mind. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and if you have something more substantive to say, that would be opportunity during item number 7 to have that discussion where you can go into more detail without time constraints. Thank you for being here again, and we look forward to it. Bye-bye.
So now is the time for public comment. Public participation for any person wishing to speak to the Advisory Redistricting Commission on matters listed or not listed on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the commission. If you're attending the meeting by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. If attending by personal computer, please click the raise your hand button, press *6 to unmute yourself, state your name and begin speaking. There's a 3-minute limit imposed on each speaker. Do we have any hands raised? Do we have anyone from the public that would wish to make a comment at this time from the audience?
Someone raise their hand. Dave Bowman, you are free to talk.
Thank you. I wanted to go ahead and ask a couple of questions of the consulting firm, specifically who went ahead and hired the firm, which entity or which person from the city went ahead and hired them, and when. Thank you.
Do we have any more callers on the line?
There are no hands at this moment.
Okay. We are in receipt of your comment. Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and introduce. I'm sorry. So at this time, we'll go ahead and let everybody know that this meeting is being recorded. It's in Spanish as well as English, and will be made available on the redistricting website at Palmdale, drawpalmdale.org. At this time, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Cindy from Tripepi Smith.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for the technical difficulties. We were trying to have Spanish interpretations available. She just arrived. So if Spanish interpretations are needed for a live session, please see the woman who just walked in. She will be getting ready here very shortly. And if you are on Zoom, please click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. So as Shanae said, my name is Sydney. I am with Tripepi Smith. With me here today is Kylie. We are here helping the city facilitate their redistricting workshops in hopes of getting some community outreach and community input for the redistricting process for Palmdale. And just to highlight some of today's goals, you get a chance to learn from the experts. So also with us today is Kristen from NDC. She is the city's demographer, and she is here to answer all questions about redistricting and also go over some of the legal requirements and also give you a preview on the mapping tools that will be made available to you. And more importantly, the experts have a chance to listen to you and learn from you. So you are the experts in your community. Nobody knows Palmdale better than you, and we want to make sure that we receive your input. Kristen will also provide a mapping tools overview. So as I said, she will give some information about what mapping tools will be made available to all of you in the coming weeks. And most importantly, you leave feeling empowered to give feedback. So we want to make sure that you have all of the resources, tools, and information that you need to be active in this process and participate to the best of your ability. So thank you all for coming tonight. You obviously care about redistricting and you want to be part of this process. But just to highlight a couple of reasons why you should care, democracy just works better when people are engaged, and you have a great opportunity today and in the coming months to participate in redistricting. And as I said before, you are the experts in your neighborhood and communities, and we want to make sure that we are taking your feedback into account. So when we are in the process of drawing maps, that all of that is taken into consideration. And lastly, redistricting only happens once in a decade. So what you do right now is going to affect Palmdale for the next 10 years. So just to go over today's schedule, we did have a little bit of a rocky start, which I apologize for, but we did start at 5:30 and we do plan to end at 7. We want to respect your time. Thank you again for coming out. And Kristen will be going over the process rules and goals and the mapping tools, and then we'll have a discussion on neighborhoods and communities of interest, and then we'll go over the next steps on how you can stay engaged. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it off to Kristen.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Shanae. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this evening. I am going to give you an overview of redistricting for the city of Palmdale so you know what to expect, what our timeline is, and how you can engage. This is the perfect time if you are watching this on Zoom or just sort of paying attention for the first time. This is a great time to get involved in redistricting. What you can see on my screen right now is the current city council district map for the city of Palmdale. So there are, as you can see, 4 districts, and these districts were put in place not a whole decade ago, but several years ago. And it's important to understand that these district boundaries were drawn using census data from 2010. So now that we have completed the 2020 census, we have to go back by law and relook at these boundaries in light of how populations have changed in the past 10 years. And actually, Palmdale has grown over the past decade by, I think, 15,000, 20,000 people. So there has been growth in the city. And as we revisit these district boundaries and determine whether or not any changes should be made to them, we have to take into consideration where folks are. So The legal deadline that the city has to meet is April 17th of next year. Sounds far away, but it will come quickly. We had our first public hearing in September. The advisory commission did convene back in August. And legally, we have to hold 4 public hearings. The city of Palmdale has opted to go above and beyond the 4 public hearings and hold a series of community workshops in each district. So here we are today in District 1 holding our first community workshop. And while these will be held in each district, you're welcome to attend any meeting that you wish, or all of them. We want you to participate. So thank you for being here. And just another note that we'll be referring to our incredible website, drawpalmdale.org, which is completely dedicated to redistricting. You can find agendas, minutes, video recordings of all of the meetings, as well as opportunities to submit your comments and draw your own maps that can be considered by the Advisory Redistricting Commission and ultimately the City Council. So for anyone in the room who isn't a lawyer, I am not either, we are still operating in a world of redistricting that is governed by federal and state law. And so in order to be empowered to participate effectively, it's helpful for folks to understand what are the legal requirements. So when we're looking at district boundaries, we have to first and always consider federal law. It is supreme. Federal law says that each city council district should contain more or less the same number of people. This ensures fairness and that each council member is representing the same number of residents. We also have to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, which says that the voting power of protected classes of voters should not be diluted. So we'll have to pay attention to that as we look at district boundaries. We will look at data that shows citizen voting age population by race and ethnicity. However, we cannot draw any districts with race being the predominant factor. So we can't draw districts based solely on race or ethnicity. That is prohibited by federal law. It is considered racial gerrymandering. In the state of California, we have a whole new set of law to deal with. We have the Fair Maps Act, which gives us a rank-ordered list that must be considered when looking at districts. So the Fair Maps Act gives us this list of 4 criteria, and we have to consider them in order. So when we're looking at our city council districts, first, we need to make sure that they're contiguous. What contiguous means is that each district is one whole piece that's connected, and that it has no separate disconnected parts. So that's about the shape of districts, and that's pretty easy to accomplish. The second criterion is that when we're drawing boundaries for our districts, we want to minimize the division of our neighborhoods and communities of interest. I'll talk more about this in a moment, but this is where we really need to hear from the public. And we need to hear what neighborhoods and communities you are part of that you wish to keep within a single council district and not have district boundaries dividing your community. Thirdly, we're going to create easily identifiable boundaries. The way that we do that is by trying to draw our district lines alongside things that people are already familiar with, like major roads, etc. Finally, we have to maintain compactness, or at least try to, right? When you look at the map of Palmdale, you see that you're obviously going to have some districts that have to reach around to grab population because that's just the way the city map is. But compactness means that in general, when you're drawing district boundaries, you're trying to draw boundaries around populations that are nearby. And you're not trying to draw a district that's avoiding a nearby population and swooping around to gather in an area that's farther away. Finally, California law says we can't favor or discriminate against any political parties in this process, so we won't even be looking at partisan data at all. Those are the two sets of law that we have to comply with. Once we've addressed federal law and state law, we can think about other goals. So we can talk about things like moving the fewest number of voters into different districts, or minimizing changes to the election cycles. Those sorts of things can be discussed, only insofar as they don't conflict with our legal requirements. So there you go. I'm happy to report that after many months of delays, we now have final population data from the United States Census Bureau that has been processed by the state of California and is in an official form that we must use for redistricting. So what you see on this slide is the total population for each of the 4 districts in Palmdale, as well as the total for the entire city. And this information is important for redistricting because we're looking back to that equal population goal for each district to have more or less the same population size. So you take that total population of the city, divide it by 4, and you get an ideal population size for your city council districts. That ideal size is 42,598 people. So what you see on the third line of this row, deviation from ideal, all that means is for those current 4 districts, how far off from that 42,598 size were those current districts in 2020? So looking at District 1, you can see that its population was 44,930. That puts it over that ideal number by 2,332. So the remaining districts you see have negative deviations, which means that they are slightly smaller than that ideal size. So one of the things that we look at in redistricting is how we can balance out the population across the 4 districts. However, the total deviation that I don't know if you can see it, it's 8.09%. And the way we get that total deviation number, because I think someone actually had me doing the math up at the podium at a commission meeting, which was fantastic. But the way you get that total deviation number is we're just looking at the difference in population size between the largest district and the smallest district as a percentage of that ideal population size. So we want to keep that total deviation low. The legal guidance that we receive says that if the total deviation is under 10%, that we're probably okay. So the good news is that we're starting with current district boundaries that are population balanced according to that 10% maximum total deviation rule. So we're at a good starting point. Whoa. I'm hitting the microphone with my mask. However, less deviation is always better. I want to talk a little bit more about communities of interest, because not only are we trying to ensure that our districts have more or less equal population, we also want to refer back to that second criterion from the state of California, which is that we minimize division to neighborhoods and communities of interest. So communities of interest is a term not many people know. We all know what a neighborhood is. We can probably identify our neighborhood. However, the law was written so that communities that may not consider themselves a traditional neighborhood could still come to the table in redistricting and preserve the geographic integrity of their communities. So We're defining a community of interest, or the state law is, as a population sharing common interests that should be included within a single council district so that it has a chance to be fairly and effectively represented. You can really define your community of interest in any way that you like, as long as you are communicating some common interests and where you are geographically within Palmdale. So, an example of a community of interest could be an area of the city where there are folks speaking the same language with a shared culture or history and shared concerns that they want to bring to the city council. The main reason that we care about these communities of interest and we need to hear from the public about them is because we do not want to draw district boundaries right through the middle of a community and divide it. Because if we do that, then it loses its chance to have one council member to represent it. So this has a lot to do with representation. And if you're part of a community and you don't care if that community is divided, then that's great. But if you want to ensure that your community is kept together within a single district, we want to hear from you. And you can bring that testimony to the commission and to the city council by making public comment and attending these meetings, by sending emails, letters, or even drawing your own maps. Which leads me to the fun part, maps. If you're here in the room, we do have a current council district map at the front on an easel. But if you're at home, you can also look at the FAQ portion of the drawpalmdale.org website, and there is an electronic version of that current map. So we also have here in the room paper maps that you can draw directly on. They indicate the total population for geographic areas, and you can draw either your community of interest, your neighborhood, your ideal council district, or if you're highly motivated, you can draw all 4 council districts on that paper map. Those are available also on the website. I'll show you where you can get those to download. And then soon, any day now, I'm crossing my fingers, we will have ready to go for you District R. District R is the online version of these paper maps. It's a little more powerful, but it's extremely easy to use. You can use Google Maps, you can use District R. You don't have to create an account, you don't have to log in. You can go directly to the site, draw a map by just clicking your mouse on the map, type in some description, and click save, and it will be submitted to part of the official public record for the redistricting process for Palmdale. So I encourage everyone to stay tuned, basically, because that tool should be launching within the month of October. I'm going to take a moment here. I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to show you the website. Because the website is full of resources, and I want to show you exactly where the tools can be found. All right. So this is the homepage you'll see when you go to drawpalmdale.org. There's the schedule, FAQs, contact information. We're going to click on Draw a Map. When you click on Draw a Map, you can see the printable PDFs, and then you'll see where there will be a link to the online tool. If you're already curious about it, you can watch a training video, though like I said, it is very easy to use. If you're going to keep tuning into these workshop meetings, I will be demoing that tool as soon as it becomes available. So definitely either come to the future meetings or check back on the website. I'm going to open this paper map just so you can see what it looks like. It looks like I've opened the Spanish one, which is totally fine. There is the Spanish version and an English version. If you want to put your name, telephone, or email, you can, or this can be totally anonymous. There's some instructions here that are telling you, hey, these numbers that you see on the map represent the number of residents in each of these geographic units. These geographic units can be used to draw districts, communities, or neighborhoods. And it tells us again about our ideal district size, and then how to submit this map once you've completed it. So I will stop sharing that and go back to the PowerPoint. And really just encourage members of the public to start thinking through your community, your neighborhood, how you feel about the current district boundaries, and what testimony you want to bring to this process. Because every map that you draw, whether it's on a scrap of paper or through the online tool, will be considered as part of this process. The other thing that I want to make sure folks are aware is every map that you submit will be processed professionally by National Demographics. We will produce a demographic report for your map showing you all of the demographic data from race and ethnicity to the number of renters to age and languages spoken, all sorts of stuff for each of the districts that you draw. So that's our way of supporting public engagement in this process. So we are going to move into a Q&A session. So for folks in the room, you are welcome to raise your hand and Sydney will bring you a microphone. If you're on Zoom, you can also raise your hand.
So there's 2 people with their hands raised on Zoom. Marcos Alvarez, you're free to talk.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. So, first of all, thank you for having this workshop. It's extremely important. But as one, this is the first time I'm being involved in a redistricting process and trying to learn the best I can. Having said that, you mentioned that whatever comes out of these workshops impacts the city of Palmdale and other areas for the next 10 years. So what is the importance of having this workshop? Why do we want this? Why do we want a district? And how important is the Voting Rights Act in relations to redistricting?
Thank you so much for that question and for tuning into this process. If you've been in Palmdale for a while, you might know how Palmdale ended up with city council districts. There are really
Correct.
there are really 2 main election systems, right? At large, where everyone in the city can vote for every council member, and then district-based elections, where the candidates have to live within the district they're running to represent, and only voters within that district can vote for that one council member. So there was a period of public engagement prior to the creation of the current districts. However, the current districts did come out of a lawsuit. So we are in a very wonderful position right now where we're not in a lawsuit and we are going through a normal, not really normal because there's nothing normal about this redistricting cycle because of COVID and all of the delays. But in the sense of public engagement, there's much more opportunity to influence the outcome of this process. And what the outcome will be is the district map. That district map will determine who can run for office in each district and who can vote in each district, right? It will determine those boundaries, and they will be in place until the next census, which won't happen until 2030. So I do encourage folks to make sure you know what district you're in now. Take a look at the current district map. Think about your neighborhood and your community, and participate in any way that you're comfortable doing so in this process between now and next year.
Thank you for answering that. I live in District 3 as it stands on the east side of Palmdale. Do you see that based on the stats you've shared with us changing? And if it does, would it be changing a lot or not when it comes to candidates running for that district?
Well, I can't predict what candidates may run. However, I can tell you that District 3 could gain, so it's currently underpopulated by little less than 1,000 people. So as we're looking at the boundaries for District 3, they could expand to bring in anywhere from, 100 up to maybe 900 more folks, 1,000 more folks. So that's something you want to think about if you're living in District 3, is which neighborhoods or communities might make sense to be included in your district, which ones might not make sense to be included within your
Right.
district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a Dave Bowman. You are free to talk.
Thank you. Early in the presentation, there was a quote of an additional 15,000 people here in the city of Palmdale. Now, will NDC have access to demographic maps that indicate where this growth is at? And thank you for mentioning the reason that we're now redistricting as a result of a lawsuit that was filed against the city of Palmdale for the redistricting, a lawsuit that was filed by the city council at the expense of the taxpayers to the tune of some $10.5 million. So I would really like to go ahead and see two things. I would like to go ahead and see that there is a comparison of the districts before and after the redistricting. And again, I would really like to go ahead and see the demographic charts or files or whatever is used to determine where this growth has gone ahead and taken place. And if this growth has gone ahead and taken place in a specific area, would it be possible that that would be the only place that would be affected by the redistricting? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. So on the slide where I showed you the current population numbers, those are the 2020 census numbers that have been adjusted by the state of California. That's the data that we're required to use for redistricting. We also have access to all of the census data, and the Census Bureau also collects additional data through the American Community Survey. And then we also have data from the California statewide database on things like voter registration and voter turnout. So all of that is information that we can map citywide and show you. I will make sure to upload just a one-page demographic profile of the current districts onto the website, because I think that would be helpful for everyone to have, and they won't have to go all the way and dig through PowerPoints to see those numbers.
Unmute again, thank you. So it kind of sounds like you really don't know where this growth in the city of Palmdale is taking place, unless, I've missed something.
I can pull that for you. However, where the growth has occurred is not necessarily what is relevant for redistricting. What's relevant for redistricting is that each of the current districts are equal in population size. So that's where we were looking and saying, District 1 is the largest district right now. Hopefully I'm correct on that. And that it's overpopulated relative to that ideal number, and then the other 3 are underpopulated. So what we're concerned with is not so much where the growth has occurred, right? Because growth has occurred across the city over the decade. What we're concerned with is where are folks now? And by now, of course, what I mean is 2020, because that is when the census took place. Are there other questions?
There are no more raised hands at the moment.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Sydney.
Thank you for the presentation, Kristen. So now we want to turn it over to all of you and have a discussion on what communities of interest are. And we put together a list of questions to help you think through this. So who is part of your community? What are some meaningful places to your community recognizes or gathers at? So any notable parks that your neighborhood all gathers at that you would identify as a place of interest in your community, and any common concerns that you might share with your group. So we ask that you share. As I said in the beginning of this presentation, your feedback is really important to this redistricting process. So all of the feedback will be documented and added to the website, so that way we can start building on that. And Kristen can reference it when we start drawing maps. So does anyone want to share what their community of interest is?
So at this time, we are in our discussion phase, which is 7.1, public input regarding future district boundaries in the city of Palmdale. To our IT, do we have anybody with raised hands?
Dave Bowman has raised his hand. You're free to talk.
Thank you. I think with the majority of the Antelope Valley, or actually of the city of Palmdale, you went in, it was quoted a 53% majority of the Hispanic population. What if the growth that has gone ahead and taken place in the city of Palmdale is predominantly Hispanic? And I think we can go ahead and we can tell what that number is by comparing the 2020 census to the 2010 census. If it has gone ahead and indicated that the Hispanic community is the one where all the growth has gone ahead and occurred, will there be a split, and will there be two Hispanic communities, or culturally, what was the term used? Culturally, I don't know, sharing the same type of culture. Okay, because that's what we're worried about. We're worried about the 53%, because, by all rights, we should go ahead and have half of the district being actually, Hispanic and Latino. And that's what a number of individuals are concerned about.
Thanks. I apologize. Thank you for your comment. We are recording it on our community of interest list. Anyone else would like to share their community of interest? I believe I saw a hand in the back.
It's not I'm not speaking to share a community of interest, but to ask a question. If redistricting is not to solely take into account race, what other types of communities are you talking about? People that like to go out to restaurants, people who are athletic, people who are religious? What are we talking about in terms of communities that are acceptable to use as a basis?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So what we're looking for is communities that are in a geographic area of the city, right? So remembering that the state law says we don't want to divide neighborhoods, but that not every area of our city necessarily is a traditional, what we think of as a neighborhood. So community of interest is sort of a catch-all term to bring in any areas of people that have things in common that might be not a traditional neighborhood. So I'll give an example from a county that I'm working with. I have a county where there are along one area several mobile home parks where folks live. And those mobile home parks are regulated by county ordinances. And so those communities may think of themselves as one community of interest because relative to their county board of supervisors, they will want to bring their concerns to that county board as one unified community. So another way to think about it is not just what you have in common with the folks you live nearby, but what are the issues your community faces? What are the areas in which you want to engage with your city government? How do you want to be represented? And then just to the previous person's comment, I did want to mention that the 2020 census numbers do show that 62% of Palmdale does identify as Hispanic. So that is a majority. However, when you look at the citizen voting age population, you get a slightly smaller number. Of the eligible voters, 52% in the city of Palmdale identify as Hispanic.
We have another question.
Okay, my question was, aside from race, we are not both agrarian and urban. We do not have areas that are solely one or solely another. So what areas are community interests? Are school districts a community of interest?
Yes, that is absolutely a school district or a school, an area around a school. Absolutely.
Okay,
be a
can you
community
name
of
me
interest.
3 more?
Can I name you 3 more? Oh, so I gave you the mobile home parks example. We can talk about people that share the same language. Really, it's important for the consultants not to come in and tell you what your communities of interest are. It's important that you as residents of the city come to the city and the commission and the consultants and tell us what your communities of interest are. That is right. So we're really trying to have these listening sessions here. And so however you want to define your community, we will listen and enter that into the public record. But again, I've given a lot of silly examples sometimes, but maybe you live near a particular road and there's a lot of road noise, or you live near an airport and all of your neighbors have some concerns about that. So these are things that we can say there are issues that bring your community together, and that your community is in a geographic area that you can identify on a map.
We have another member from our audience, and if you can please state your name prior to your question beforehand. Thank you.
Lorraine Rowe. I know of some impacts that would impact my community, such as schools, law enforcement, taxes, growth, construction oversight, engagement from federal government, culture, disparities in equal rights, housing, and available services.
May I ask which neighborhood you live in?
I live in District 1.
District 1, can I ask which cross streets or which geographical, I guess, identifiers you can provide?
Division Street and I guess Palmdale
So Division Street and Palmdale Boulevard.
And I'm so glad you brought up housing, because one of the things that NDC's aim is, by providing you with some of the demographic data, is so that you can use that to help provide uh, statistics for your communities of interest. So another community of interest might be people who live in apartments and condos versus people who live in single family homes, if they are clustered in a geographic area.
And I just wanted to say, to add on that, because I know there's some concern about the apartments being built in the east side versus the west side. Seems to be a large disparity, and that's one of my concerns.
Thank you so much for your question. Do we have anyone else in the audience this evening? Please state your name first before you ask your question. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Laverne Harmon, and I live in District 4, and I don't really understand the map. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one in the room who doesn't, but,
I know you were at that previous meeting where I was doing math.
yes,
So.
yes, I was, but I didn't get it then, and I don't get it now. But anyway, in my neighborhood, I have my district, and it's 47th East, and I would say Avenue S, maybe. And we have parks. We have a couple of parks like Dominic Masari, and we have a newer park on Avenue S that's maybe 2 years old. I don't even know the name of it. And in my neighborhood, the neighborhoods are very tight, and the parking is like horrible. They have these streets that come into each other with no stop signs, so you people just come flying out of there, and you have to be really careful. And the people on one street park on other people's street. You don't have nowhere to park, so it's very congested. All I have to say.
Thank you very much. Oh, I have another. Please state your name first before your question, and thank you.
Good evening. My name is Juanita McWilliams. I'm one of those people that live in an apartment. And if your car breaks down, you have to take public transportation. Thank you for that. But it's not good. Or if you're a senior citizen, which I am, you take access. That's horrible. Something needs to be done. I don't know any of my friends that are seniors that take access that it works for the people, nor does the buses and the signal. If you have to walk across 25th, I'm going to give you a street, 25th Street and 25th Street East, I'm sorry, and Palmdale Boulevard, before you get in the middle, that light is changing. I am so afraid that somebody's going to run over me. Okay. And I'm from Chicago, so I shouldn't be afraid. But it does bother me. And I don't take public transportation that often, but when I do, like yesterday in the wind, that I couldn't hardly see, it was really difficult. So for people, to me, that have to do it every day, I know they're having a hard time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Do we have anybody else in the audience back here anywhere? Do we have anybody online?
We do have someone online.
Go ahead, please.
Dave Bowman, you're free to speak.
Okay, thank you. And now that we've gone ahead and determined the 63% Latino population of the city of Palmdale, after the lawsuit, the courts went ahead and determined that the only way that these individuals would be able to receive parity in relation to their representation at the city council was to district. Will that percentage be taken into consideration to allow the parity of the Latino community to be maintained as far as the city council is concerned?
Yeah, so when we're talking about the Voting Rights Act, we're primarily looking at something we call CVAP, which is the citizen voting age population. So we're not looking at the total population of people in each racial and ethnic category. We are looking at the eligible voters because that's really a proxy for voting power and whether or not that group would be able to elect a representative to represent their interests. So we do have, according to the census, American Community Survey, which is a representative sample survey done every year. For 2020, we do have 2 districts, that's districts 3 and 4, that have more than 60% Hispanic citizens of voting age, so over 18, and as well as District 1 having 53% of citizens voting age who are Hispanic. So what that tells us is that of our 4 districts in Palmdale, 3 of them are currently majority Latino districts in terms of the Voting Rights Act. And I know we have an attorney in the room here who can jump in and add any other context or considerations for Voting Rights Act.
We're going to hear from the attorney. Because the reality is that the speaker has just gone ahead and identified 3 communities, 3 districts that are predominantly Hispanic. Now, in an effort to go ahead and achieve the parity that we go ahead and we deserve here in the Antelope Valley or in the city of Palmdale, there should be at least 2 districts that are go ahead and that are allowed to go ahead and have parity. We need at least 2 districts to provide us with that parity.
He's not speaking at this time.
That's because I was cut off. All we're really interested in is making sure that the Hispanic population of the Antelope Valley has just as much say as anybody else based on the democratic process of majority.
Thank you. Any other comments on communities of interest? I did pull up the questions to help us think through some of this.
I do have one here from the floor.
Juanita McWilliams again. Why don't we have movie theaters in Palmdale? Why don't we have regular theaters? All of us that live on the east side or partial, what do you call it? We have to go all the way to the mall, okay? I don't think that's fair. What happened to the roller skating rinks? You know, I'm thinking community now that we're talking about community, right? All these things I'm talking about, I enjoy doing. And I know several other people who enjoy it also, but it's not in Palmdale. Palmdale, to me, on the east side is a beautiful community. We have a lot of people who work together and do things together, but we have to either go to Lancaster or somewhere else to do it. And to me, don't take it away, but I'd like to see more of it.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Any other comments on communities of interest?
We have an Angel Sedford. Commissioner Sedford, feel free to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My comment, I think, is I had a comment earlier, but I think a lot of it has already been addressed, and I kind of just wanted to help the conversation move along. But I recognize that people obviously have different interests, and I think the interests that are being raised are the types of things that, if you're able to gather the people in your neighborhood and in your community around those types of issues, it will help this redistricting process along and allow you to work towards those goals that we all have of improving our community. But specific with regards to just other items that may or may not be relevant to you to help move the conversation along, but a lot of it has already been mentioned. In particular, housing, with regards to the apartments, I was actually thinking about, you have certain housing communities that are obviously are HOAs and certain ones that are not. And so there may be certain neighborhoods that have a lot of HOA communities in them, and they actually have common interests because there are different rules and regulations that get passed that can impact them. So even though they're not the same neighborhood, they could be viewed as a community of interest. And that can go both ways for HOA or non-HOA communities. So that's one of the things that popped into my head, aside from the individuals who live in apartments versus single family homes. But I just appreciate the fact that there are people that are involved in here. I can't see you guys. I don't know how many people are actually there in person. I'm always advocating for this to be promoted very well. So I hope we have a decent turnout there. But thank you guys for coming. That was the only comment that I had.
Thank you for those comments. And just to piggyback off of that, in other jurisdictions, another community of interest or point of reference could be homeowners versus renters. I know that does come up a lot in other communities. So if you are a renter or a homeowner that you feel you share concerns with your neighbors who are also renters or homeowners, please feel free to speak on that as well. But that's another example. And I can give examples since I'm not the demographer.
And to even piggyback off you again, another thing that could just be employment. I think it was mentioned somewhere on the list, the aerospace community. So there's a lot of people that work in those areas. There we have communities, neighborhoods where there are a lot of police officers. We have neighborhoods where we have a lot of warehouse workers. Those are all things to take into consideration when you're trying to decide your community of interest.
Yes, I would say small business communities could be one as well. If you have a pocket in Palmdale that has a ton of small businesses, that could be a community of interest as well. And if you have residents in Palmdale who work in Palmdale as well, you probably share similar concerns that you might want to bring forward and identify for the purpose of redistricting.
Hi, this is Lorraine Rowe. One of the things I think that is greatly needed in the Antelope Valley is a technical school. We have corporations that come here, and I'm sure they could contribute to creating a technical school.
Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have a comment on communities of interest or want to share what their neighborhood is? I'd be interested to know where you live and if you live next to a park or a body of water where you and your residents share some interest. That would definitely be worth noting as well.
I think we also, sorry, Shamika Andre, we also have some communities where lots are larger. People are on an acre or more, and they have common interest. And then I think examples of communities of interest that come to mind when we're talking about certain things within our community is like the Rancho Vista area that, and I live toward that area as well, but Rancho Vista, people consider it kind of its own little community or entity within Palmdale. And you'll have people refer to, oh, I live in Rancho Vista. Not I live in Palmdale, but I live in Rancho Vista. So I would think that that would be a great example of a sort of community of interest.
Thank you. And I believe we have a hand raise on Zoom.
Thank you. You know, I'm going in and examining all the bullet points that we've gone ahead and we've listed right here, but there is no bullet point for the consideration of parity for the majority community here in Palmdale. Why is that?
Hi, Dave. I don't know if you can see the Word document here, but I think we've been scrolling down. The very first bullet point is Hispanic communities. And, you know, because
There's no comment on parity for the majority community, Hispanic communities, without any explanation as to why it's there. Thank you.
Hello, David. This is Chair Reyna. Could you give me some wording on what you would like that to say, please? I would truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reyna. Only that there really should go ahead and be given consideration as far as equal representation for the majority here in the Antelope Valley. That's all we're looking for, is equal representation. And if the Hispanic and Latino people are 53% of the community, then by sheer mathematics alone, we should have at least 2 seats on the city council. That's what I'm trying to go ahead and get out there. And it seems like we're willing to go ahead and discuss all those other things, but not the reality that, you know, we're the majority that's out here now, and we need more representation. And this is what this whole discussion is all about, is the elections coming up for the city council. And one time the courts went ahead and decided that the only way we were going to go ahead and get any representation is by going ahead and dividing into districts. Now what we have to go ahead and do is start making that representation equal. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. And absolutely right that the reason that district boundaries matter is because they determine the options for representation. Unfortunately, the district boundaries, or unfortunately for the point you're making, they don't determine who's going to get elected. They only determine the boundaries for the voters and where the candidates must be. And as we know, making sure that we have members of our community registered to vote and willing to run for office are often much bigger hurdles. So to the extent that you can evaluate the current district map and suggest changes to it that are specific and serve that interest of parity that you are prioritizing and that we all believe is important, that would be very helpful. And I do hope that you will consider drawing some maps that will achieve those goals. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? On my IT tech up there?
There are no more raised hands at this moment. Oh, Dave Bowman has raised his hand again.
I do have a person in the audience, please. If we could do this person first. Thank you. Please state your name.
Thank you. Antonio Ortega. To add to communities of interest, Palmdale is a commuter city. So a lot of our people leave to work in Los Angeles or in Victorville, or maybe they work at Edwards Air Force Base. Either way, most of the people who are in here do leave the city limits to go work elsewhere. So that's part of the community of interest as well, because I know where my parents live in the District 4, almost everyone on their street is a commuter. Thank you.
I have one more question in the back. Hold on, please. Please state your name for the record before you do your question. Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Vivian Davenport. And if you slide your slide down, I think it's question 4. There's 4 where we say schools, law enforcement, constructions, oversight, culturally equal. Might cover that in terms of your stating at the beginning, community of interest. And we have Hispanic communities. And I'm kind of wondering, or maybe I didn't understand when someone made that as a focal point, because then we are focusing on that Hispanic community, because we like identify as Black families, Latino families, as terms of not just being, we have a large population of different families in the Antelope Valley. And if I'm looking at that, you start off with Hispanic communities. I'm not sure of how that fits in the redistricting.
Thank you for that point. And I want to try to give some clarification here, which is, while we don't want to draw district boundaries based on race or ethnicity solely, when we're talking about our communities of interest, it's completely fine to identify your community of interest based on your shared language, history, race, ethnicity. A community of interest is not a whole district. When we're talking about the districts, each district will be a collection or a group of communities and neighborhoods. So hopefully that can clarify why there may be different criteria that we're talking about when we're actually drawing the district boundaries. We want to be broader and more inclusive of different types of factors. But when we're talking about your community, that's up to how you define it.
I think you had a hand raised from David Bowman.
He has since lowered his hand.
Okay, hold on. We have one in the audience. Thank you.
Avram Harris, are you allowed to take, I mean, I'm looking at some of this and I'm wondering, is it acceptable to take into account socioeconomic level of an area? I just wanted to know yes or no.
Yes, absolutely. And we have income data, employment data, and some other socioeconomic variables that come from the Census Bureau that once our online tool is launched, you'll be able to actually look at those on the city map. Right now, I can only show you a spreadsheet with that information. But yes, socioeconomic status is often one way that we talk about communities of interest.
Do we have any hands raised?
Not at this time.
Are there any other questions from our audience? At this time, I'd like to take the opportunity of thanking you for being here today to share with our community and our people, you know, the process of redistricting. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody on the 16th, which is right around the corner, as we have 2 more districts that we'll be doing. So if you can see up there, it says District 4 and District 3. There will be community workshops there. One's at Knight High School. The other is at the Palmdale Oasis Park and Recreation Center. With that being said, can I get a motion to adjourn? Hold on, I've got a hand up really quick.
Okay. My name is Laverne Harmon. I live in District 4. I live maybe 2 blocks from P. Knight High School, Shadow Hills High School, Golden Poppy High School. All of those schools get out around 3 o'clock. It's like if you got to go somewhere, you have to do it before they get out, or it's like being on the 14 freeway at rush hour. And 1 o'clock, I mean, most people in my neighborhood are at work. I'm retired, but most people are at work at 1 p.m. I can't imagine who would be there except us retired people. So I don't know what the answer is to it.
Just to clarify, October 16th is actually Saturday.
It
And
is
we're
a Saturday?
providing 2 workshops that day at 2 times
Oh.
to make it available to all residents.
I should have looked at my calendar, huh? My bad.
Thank you for sharing.
I did not want to interrupt her. I was going to wait for her to finish. So with that said, I do have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Thetford does have something to say.
Oh, please, go ahead, Commissioner Thetford.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was actually laughing at that last comment myself. But
I was keeping a straight face.
Sure. I'm just kind of curious. It's just more of a comment. As I've mentioned in the last couple of meetings and stuff, I'm always just concerned with how involved the community is going to be. And as I stated, it sounds like there are quite a few people there. So I'm hoping whomever that is at the podium, if you can kind of help me out, just by a show of hands, how many of you citizens actually plan on drawing a map? Because that's what's going to make these types of changes. Or that could potentially make these types of changes to the concerns that you guys have. So can you tell me, do we see a lot of hands up? Or I can't see.
I saw about 5 hands shoot up, maybe six, six and a
Awesome.
half. In the room, that
In the
is.
room, of course, yes. So, you know, if you 5 or 6 individuals can also, you know, it sounds like for those of you that had voices, you guys say you have other people that feel the same way. If you could encourage them to draw maps as well, or reach out to other people, because I want to make sure that, you know, everyone who has the opportunity to do this does this. I know that there's a lot of concerns and questions, and everyone wants to be heard and have their voice out there. And I believe me, I'm the type of individual that definitely understands that. But the whole purpose of this is to be able to give us the opportunity to select a map that's preferably chosen by the citizens of the community versus someone outside of the community. So I just would encourage you all to continue to engage and engage others to be engaged.
Thank you so much. We now have 2 more questions. Go ahead, IT.
All right. I'm not sure if you guys are raising your hands to say you will fill out a map, but in case you're not, Troy Gabbard, feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, that was just to say I would do a map. Sorry, thank you.
That makes me very happy. I was gonna say even if they weren't raising their hands for that, now they have to.
Thank you. Dave Bowman, you may unmute yourself.
In relation to NDC's mapping here in the city of Palmdale, once NDC goes ahead and determines what the maps are to be, will the community be able to go ahead and comment and provide input after NDC draws maps?
Yes, this is an excellent question. So, to the extent that NDC is drawing maps, we are only drawing maps based on feedback we get or direction we get from the commission, and to fill in any gaps from what we receive from the public. We also draw maps to formally process what has been submitted by the public. So sometimes NDC will be drawing a map, but it's a map submitted by a member of the public that we're just matching to census block boundaries, etc. So the first public hearing that we had was required by law to not actually consider any maps. But now we can start looking at maps, and there will be more public hearings before the city council ultimately votes to adopt the final map. So yes, we will go through an iterative process where NDC will process all of the maps submitted by the public. We will create any maps that we have been instructed to create from the commissioners, and those first round of maps will be presented for feedback from the public, the council, and the commission. And at that point, we take all of that feedback and come back to you with revised maps. So there will be plenty of opportunities to weigh in, and I hope that you will do so.
Are there any more questions? We do have a motion on the floor to adjourn.